So I mentioned earlier that this conference, there was no clear vision of what this conference would be when we were first starting to plan it. What I did was actually meet with friends, pastors, therapists for several months and just asked, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What's important to your ministry? What are you doing there? And so Carol was one of our therapists at AACCS. It was good to reconnect with her. And when we were catching up and I was learning about her church, I was like, your church is doing some really cool things. And she didn't think they were particularly cool. But as someone who had been asking these questions, I thought, no, it's pretty cool. So this is why their ministry is coming here today. And I want to reiterate this. We're not highlighting church ministries to give pressure to say, you're doing this thing, we should all do it. No, this is about learning about their process, learning about their relationships with one another. What was working well? What allowed for this or that to happen? And then imagining and asking those questions of you and your community. So I just wanted to mention that. All right. So can you please introduce your church and yourselves and then your roles within your church?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Glad to be with you. This is so impressive, not only because of the size, but the capacity for healing in this room is just amazing. So glad to be with you. My name is Eugene Sim. Our church is called Church Every Day. We are the English ministry called Grace Life. We're located in Northridge. Our English ministry is about 90 to 100 on a Sunday. So it's a small, medium church. And after COVID, as you know, with attendance, how it is. But we are in an English ministry under a CAM, so I will gladly receive your sympathies and empathy for that. But interestingly enough, I feel like it's been the catalyst for healing and well-being, because a common narrative of many of our people that are coming to church is that I've been burned or hurt in the Korean American church. I vow never to come back, and somehow they have come to us. And even that's my story too, that I said I would never pastor at an immigrant church under a Korean ministry. But the powerful thing that we have experienced is that because of all of these hurt and pain and vows never to be a part of a Korean immigrant church, they've been a part of our ministry and congregation, and they've experienced healing. So it's kind of like a full circle moment for people. Linda is one of those stories, and if there's time later, hopefully she can share her story about that. So, yeah.
Just introduce myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Hi, I'm Carol. Nice to meet you. I am married to Eugene. I was in ministry for about 16 years, and I felt like so many times I felt like I was in over my head. I didn't really know how to help people. So I remember many days I would be driving to work or driving to the office and praying and crying with people. And I just couldn't say anything more than just like, I'm praying for you. I love you, right? And so I just felt like I needed to get more training. So I went back to grad school, and because I just wanted to be of help to people. And so I get to wear both hats now. And it's been a lot of fun, and I love what I do. I'm glad to be here with you all. And so good to see some of our old community members and the church members here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Linda Paek. I'm the ministries coordinator pastor at Grace Life part-time. I actually moved back to Southern California just over 8 years ago to help take care of my elderly parents. And I kind of got into this situation a year ago, unbeknownst to me, that God had a plan to bring me back to a Korean American church, which I haven't been a part of in 30 years. And after I was a part of a very large immigrant church in LA on staff there, and I thought I'd never go back. Having lived all over the country and being back in LA, that God had a plan for me to receive healing and do it through community, and was invited to come on staff a year ago, and it's been really, really great.
Hey, everybody. My name's Mike Rix. I am an associate pastor at Grace Life, and I'm half Chinese. My dad's German, married to a Korean-American woman. So our kids are half Korean, quarter Chinese, quarter German. and been part of this Korean American ministry now for some time. Never would have expected that I would have been in a ministry context. I went to school to be a lawyer. I still am a lawyer, so I serve bivocationally and have served different contexts within our church, from children's ministry to college to the English congregation now. And so it's a real pleasure to be here and just here to learn and listen and be part of the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, all of you. All right, so we have some of their sort of cultural, generational context. What have been some of those challenges related to whether Korean identity, generational ministries, anything at all? How do you describe the challenges that your church has had as it relates to well-being?
Well, in our context, I think I grew up, and many of our people grew up, very compartmentalizing spirituality and everything else, whether it be, I grew up with the understanding that the role of the church is doctrine and spiritual practices. And if you introduce anything other than doctrine and spiritual practices, then it could be borderline new agey or, heretical or whatever. And so that's definitely a challenge generationally, but also culturally. And so that's one thing that we've noticed. But as pandemic and other personal crises, marriage crises, and as Jessica alluded to in the beginning, that it intersected with mental health professionals, and we began to kind of introduce, we began to introduce the whole well-being of people. And so that's kind of our context. I don't know, anybody else?
Yeah, one of the discipleship courses that we utilize at Grace Life is the Emotionally Healthy Spirituality coursework that Peter Scazzaro introduced. And I think initially, not that there was pushback about that type of curriculum within the church context, but I think people just didn't understand what this was. Why are we talking about emotional health? And I think over time, now that we've been doing it for several years, people are starting to come on board and understand that discipleship involves the whole person, our emotions, our psychology, our relationships. And so people are starting to catch on and starting to apply some of this material in their lives and in our community. So that's been interesting to be part of that.
Yeah. So when I work with couples, we often talk about meta emotions and how our feelings or our beliefs about feelings could cause tension and conflict in relationships. And we saw something similar happening in our context. So when we started talking about emotional well-being or holistic discipleship, there was a little initial, it evoked some strong reactions in people. And so we had to go back and have multiple conversations and redefine what we mean. Like, what does it mean to be emotionally healthy? Right? Because I think people come from all different understanding of emotions not being something that we could trust, or being emotional is kind of a negative thing, right? And so we had to really just kind of make sure that we were all on the same page, and that took some time. And I think it's an ongoing conversation that we're still having to this day. Yeah. And our Korean immigrant church is interesting in that we all come from different denominational backgrounds. So we have the very charismatic to very people who come from a very traditional conservative churches. And so defining for what that means and why that is important has been an ongoing work.
Can I ask a follow-up? And so combining what several of you said, you were seeing the need and then had curriculum, and then as leaders, you initiated that process. You thought, this is good for us, let's try it. And so then there was sort of pushback, confusion, and then it sort of stuck.
Could I see a show of hands of who are familiar with Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, Peter Scazzaro? Yeah, so many of us, right? So when I first came across it, I was like, this is it. Because the foundational premises there is how can someone who's been a Christian, a church attender for 20, 30 years, yet as a person and as their ability to love others, why are they so horrible at it? And there's this disconnect, And I'm not just talking about the elder board, at church. Sorry if there's any elders there. I think I offended people. I apologize. I just realized that. I'm learning in self-awareness here. But so that was something that I resonated with, and then when I learned through Scripture that that our emotional well-being is an obstacle in order to love people better, and it made sense to me, and we were seeing that. So that's how our story started, and then the result of it is that people have commented or noticed new people who visited. They realize that our people are very loving and very open, and they go to great lengths to love one another and be friendly and to accept and things like that. And that was a long-term process, and so we saw it being very fruitful. And so we thought, okay, there's something to this. So
And it changed us too.
yes, it changed our marriage. It changed our relationship too. Yeah.
As you're talking about your own relationships, as I met with Carol, this is what stuck out to me. It's like there's something about their relationships to one another as friends, colleagues, that allowed this to unfold in the way that it does. So, can you tell us about, how are your relationships to one another as leaders in the church? How has that played a role in your church's well-being?
Okay, so our church is 25 years old, and I've been part of this church on and off since its beginning. So I was the first children's pastor. I was there when church was being planted. And then we had another couple who was volunteering under us in education ministry. Their name is Joshua and Belle. And we liked them so much, and we saw such great giftings in them. And we asked the church if they could hire Joshua to be our boss, to be the education pastor. So we already had a relationship with my boss before he came on board. And he actually started the English ministry of our church. And long story short, I left the church. Sumi, who was my friend, who's married to Mike, took over my position as a children's ministry, and that ministry just kind of blew up. And when it blew up, Mike was trying to pursue Sumi, so was coming to Korean church where he didn't speak any Korean, just delivering snacks and setting up chairs. And then they said, "Can you teach a class?" So he taught a class. And then later they asked him, "Hey, can you be the other children's pastor?" And so he said, "Sure, I'll be the children's pastor." And so he became the children's pastor, married Sumi, and then when Joshua left to go move out of state, they asked Mike eventually to take over the English ministry, right? And then Mike did that for a number of years. He went to seminary. And then I think you could add more to this. Yeah. And then eventually, as Mike was going through his own stuff, do you want to step in and share?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, I married into the church in that sense. Most people at the church think I'm half Korean because I, on the Korean side, I bow well, do the 안녕하세요 well. So I've kind of, blended in. But yeah, what we sort of, the English congregation was a bit of a restart from our college ministry. And I was doing that for a couple of years and had taken a break from legal practice and decided I want to get back into practice and knew I couldn't be the lead pastor anymore. And just around that time frame, Eugene and Carol were transitioning back to the States after doing ministry in Hong Kong for a while. And it was sort of perfect timing. And so we went into this collaboration as friends. I remember at one of our early trips as married couples, we had talked about how cool would it be to do ministry together. And so that's been sort of the foundation of sort of our ministry life together, is that there's friendship and trust that's been there. And so it's been a real supportive environment to work in.
Yeah. And the cool thing is Joshua and Belle left and they came back and they served under Mike as lay leaders, right? And Joshua was my boss. So when Eugene and I came on board, then he was serving under us. So I think all of this transition and flexibility was possible because there was such like deep history of relationship and trust and love. And so of course we have to have multiple, like sometimes difficult conversations amongst one another during the transition. But I think we just trust them. We don't have to second guess their motives. And we know that we have one another's backs. Right, so I think that's what allowed that to happen.
Yeah, so I don't know if you're following the story. Josh and Belle were the lead pastors. We were under them. They left. Mike was the lead pastor, and he stepped down. I took over as the lead pastor. So Mike was the lead pastor. I'm the lead pastor. Now he used to be a lead pastor, now he's under me. So that takes an incredible, and Joshua came under me and Mike. So the hierarchical is just totally broken. The hierarchy is just totally broken. And I think that's very unique in our situation. I mean, to use the sports analogy, for a head coach to be under some random new head coach, that doesn't work in the real world, typically speaking. So I think that's what Jessica was alluding to, that our relationship, friendship, trust is unique, that we can submit kind of, I don't want to use submit, but submit under one another through relationship. And then Linda came on board through.
Yeah, so when I lived outside of California, I would come visit my family. And when I didn't have a church I wanted to visit, I would come to Grace Life because my parents go to the Korean side. And then I show up and I go, wait, my former students are here with their families, some of them. And my youngest brother and sister-in-law started coming. And then I just kind of built a relationship with Eugene and Carol. Carol and I would socialize. We talked about going to hotel lobbies to go check them out sometimes. It's something that I enjoy doing. And even though we still haven't done that. But I would just, come and get to know them. And I just pop in and out, met people here and there. And when I came back 8 years ago, I did find a local church, but they closed its doors. And I was like, Lord, I got to find a church, but I don't know where to go. And I felt the Lord was asking me, are you ready to heal from your former Korean church wounds? And I thought, I still have them? Hence like visceral reactions when I'm in a big group of Asian people and that kind of thing. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But Carol's a good friend. So the next following week, when I was visiting Grace Life, Mike had given an announcement that we're starting membership class next week. And I felt that was the Lord's to me. And so, I that's how I became a part of Grace Life. I was here for 4 years and just built relationships, just started coming to things. And just through community, just being myself. I didn't feel pressure to do anything. Joined as many things as I wanted to. And just looking back like a year, I realized I've been healing this whole time. And I didn't have to try. I'm a go-getter. Let's just try to get healed. And didn't have to. I looked back in the last year and I went, oh my gosh, God's been doing it. And I didn't even have to try. I needed it through community, relationships, showing up, and just being myself. And it was without the pressure of having to do stuff because of my background. It was just lovely. And the connection here that we have, I also have, Sumi's in one of my groups. It's so great. It's so great. And never done ministry this way. So it was just an easy transition. I said yes right away, when the opportunity came.
And Linda, feel free to say however much you want to or not. When I think about this shared experience many people have of trauma or pain from immigrant church life, what is the contrast for you in this community? What feels different in your body, in your relationships that you can articulate?
It's completely different. Because when I was starting out in ministry in local church, I was first a seminary student and then came on staff when I finished. I was kind of just thrown into this big community. My supervisor never checked on me. All the meetings were in Korean. I was very young at the time. To the point where I didn't even live with my parents and they would call my dad when there's a meeting change. Those kinds of things. I was, female, single. They didn't know what to do with me. And so I think it was just really painful because not having knowing what I was doing, being so young, no mentor, nothing. And it was just kind of I gave my all. And I'm so grateful for those years. But now what's so different is there's a team. There's already a relationship. There's trust built. There's no pressure to do things. They take my suggestions very well. I have a lot of ideas and just things that I see and I feel hey, what do you think about that? And it's just a great dialogue. And so the literally collaborative ministry that we do in the context of community and relationship has been really, really healing.
Thank you for sharing that.
And I think we're not very hierarchical. I think because of our history in immigrant churches, I just reacted the opposite. So if they're going to be hierarchical, we're not going to be. We're going to be very collaborative, and it's been working out pretty good. Yeah.
As a side note, if I can mention, I know we have scholars here who are Korean American church experts, and this is not like, I think what this church is doing is such a gift. Like the fact that people experience healing and increased wholeness. There's no question, right? And my therapeutic mind, because many of you know, one of the main questions people have, Asian Americans have and come into therapy is, how do I deal with my parents, right? It's a major point of pain. And this is the way it manifests in a church system, right? And so also wanting to validate, like, many of us who identify as either usually second gen, 1.5 second gen adults, that there's some work to be done around why and how our parents did the things they did. Why did they do it that way? What do they not have access to that we do now, right? Like this wealth of information that our generation gets to have in future generations. And so I imagine some of the healing that many of us can do is to have the cross-generational empathy upward, right? Yeah. So can you say more about, I'm sure maybe pastors and ministry people are wondering, what are programs at your church? What are things that have taken place since all of this shift has happened?
I was asked to do this, voluntold. So we have something called Life Tracks, where we have 4 different courses throughout the year that more like discipleship type, apprenticeship type courses that we offer. And then we also have like a men's and women's ministry. We do different events and gatherings to just kind of build a relationship and fellowship. We have something called Starting Point for every Sunday. We have people serve. We have like Sunday morning cafe where there's like donuts and coffee and other things. And we have a cookie fairy who brings baked goods pretty much every week on our own volition. We call her the cookie fairy. And then we have the media team. We have, all those guys. And then we have the chairman who put up all the chairs every single day, Sunday. Yeah, we have the prayer team. We meet before service and we faithfully pray for the needs of the church and for that Sunday as well. If there's anybody has like health issues or whatnot. We have our church as a whole, they offer free lunch on Sundays. There's 3 services, and during our service, we bring over food, and families can actually have lunch together with other families. And so we have a whole crew that helps bring over lunch and set up and clean up. Let's see. Oh, we have Ruth Ministry, where it's caring for those that have like babies and deaths in the family or just hard times. We help provide resources as well as sometimes just gifts to encourage them. What else? I'm missing something. Oh, yes. We have something called Life Together groups, which kind of grew in breadth as well during and after the pandemic. Not everybody can meet, like in the small group type setting. So we have 3 options. Life groups, which is like mixed couples or singles where everybody's together. They're larger groups and they can also bring their kids. We have life pods where it's same sex, smaller groups like 3, 4, 5. Your group is bigger. And then like my group, we meet on Mondays and we brunch hard. And because, we can, and in our area. And then I'm also in a life pair. And this is for people that can't meet in a smaller group setting because of, family challenges and work stuff. So I do a life pair over the phone 1 hour a week with someone. And it's been great. We meet even when we take breaks, like we still talk on the phone. So it's been really, really wonderful. Yeah. Anything else? Am I missing?
Maybe this will be answered in another question, but in the beginning of our tenure at Grace Life, because we have relationship with Mike and Sumi, and other leaders in the church. We took a weekend trip, and we went on a retreat, and we did an exercise called the Belief Tree. It was something that I learned in my time in YWAM, Youth with a Mission. And so we identified, like, what do we believe in based on the characters of God, based on scripture, and what values come out of that beliefs, right? And what does that look like in our policies and procedures? And what programs or what kind of fruit are we aiming to get? And so we kind of had that framework when we designed some of the things that we did. So one of the things that we knew we didn't want to do is we believe that Jesus came to give us life, right, in abundance. So we didn't want to suck life out of people. So we wanted our church to do things that was life-giving, right? And we also know that in our congregation, we have people, I'm sure you have too, people who share and they kind of become vulnerable in small group and they never show their face again because they're so come with shame. So we wanted to create a safe environment where they may not feel comfortable sharing in a large life group, but they may feel comfortable sharing in life pair or life pods, right? And so we wanted to create a safe place where people could experience life. And so those kind of like some of those things that we laid out kind of set a track for the way we do things. So even in our life pods and life group, we all take turns leading, right? Because most people in the congregation, they're all capable people, right, who lead meetings at work. So, and it's a lot of burden on the leaders to lead every week, right? So we divvy it up. So now it's very normal part, like my life group members are here. We take turns facilitating our life groups. So it's easy, right? And we look forward to coming because I'm not always having to lead. And plus, I hate having to do things because I'm a pastor's wife. Like that makes me want to resist going to meetings. And so I love that I could just go as myself and be free and also receive and learn from others. Yeah. So that's kind of our motto.
Can I just reflect the pieces I'm hearing that are really significant is that I'm sure it helps that there's a clinician, a trained licensed clinician, in the leadership group, but that your awareness of people's well-being, what can lead to exhaustion, burnout, being stressed out by ministry. And so you created these structures to really allow for that. And I'm also hearing like different ways of making visible your community members, right? People who have different work schedules, life demands, and you created a system to invite people in. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add also that we try very hard not to motivate people through guilt. And so, because we do try to emphasize a very gospel-centered approach in our preaching and teaching and ministry, that it's always in response to God's generosity, a response to God's grace, that we're grateful and therefore we want to plug into these ministries, we want to serve. And so we try to avoid that sort of guilt-driven type of ministry philosophy that maybe the older generation would employ. It just doesn't work in our context.
I'm going to ask a question that isn't quite on here, but your comment just made me think of it, and then we'll finish up so we can do Q&A. So what you just said, Mike, is really significant. I felt a lot of nods, right? Maybe it's familiar to some of us. There has to be some sort of internal work that has been done in order to identify that and then shift the culture of a church. How do you make sense of what has happened within yourself to know what is guilt inducted behavior, what is not, right? Yeah. Any thoughts?
Well, I wish we could say we're proactive, but honestly, we're reactive of all the guilt and shame that we were given. So once again, we're not going to do that. I know this is not answering the question directly, but we're motivated by those values. And so there are going to be some Sundays where we don't have a big production because people are tired. We are intentionally giving them a week off. So sometimes our praise team is just 1 or 2 people. Generally we have 5 or 6 of a team. Excellence is kind of the culture of our modern day of like everything's got to be excellent. And I enjoy excellence, but not over well-being of people. And we have found that when they're healthy, the quality of ministry is actually a lot better. And so people would rather receive quality ministry than a big production. And so we're not very flashy. at all. You know, if you come to our church, you might be disappointed, like that's not, you know, a big production, but yeah, we were kind of intentional about serving people. But to answer the original question, like I said, it was a personal journey for me, and you know, I was just really struggling as a pastor ministry, wanted to quit many times, and so I needed to get help, and I felt like I was going through you know, my own therapy and just learning my own journey in self-awareness, my own healing through that, and I was like, I have to bring this to my people. I value that, and I want my people to be well. And so, yeah, that's my personal journey.
Thank you.
I was going to say that even though we have all these different teams serving, especially on Sundays, like nobody serves twice in a row. It's like we have a rotation. And because a lot of the people in our congregation have been like really involved in their former churches, they've burned out. They want to come here and hide or just take a break. And we let them. We don't like, we hear like, you know, what all that they've done in the past. And we're like, if you want to take a break, you're totally great doing that. We receive that. And so I think people don't feel the pressure to do that. And we're really big about hospitality and food in our congregation. Like there's always something. And I think that is, I mean, so biblical, right? The feasts and all that stuff, and God cares about what we eat. But it really does add to that family, like bring your kids to the events, you know, when we have like newcomers dinners, bring your family. Like there's always something. We provide those things. And that really just sets the tone and allows us to, you know, when there's food, people like their guards come down, right? So especially Asian Americans, we're always around food. So it's just really made I see the significance, and I find great joy in that because one of my things that I love and passionate about is feeding people, and so that it just goes along with it. It's just wonderful that we all feel this way.
Thank you. Oh, my screen turned off. I'm trying to get to about 10:48ish so we can have some time for dialogue with our community here. But feel free to answer the ones that maybe you've been preparing for. But one of the ones I wanted to address is, can you speak to your own contextual identity? If I can briefly mention this to the group, I forgot to mention this at the beginning. In meeting with pastors and therapists across a couple months, people kept asking me, who's the audience of this conference? Who's the audience, right? Is it all Asian and Asian American church communities? And what I realize is, no, it cannot be, because we have very distinct well-being issues as generations shift. So you'll notice we have centered here English-speaking Asian American, Pan-Asian church context. Okay, so that's actually deliberate. It's not like, oh, we're leaving out this and this community. It's that the issues that a first gen, like I'll speak for myself, Taiwanese church community is navigating, or an immigrant Chinese church that is recent immigrants, their mental health and well-being issues are very different from a second, third, fourth gen Asian English-speaking context. It has to do with our resources, our training, our access to school and education, all these things. And so as I ask that, this is why each of these groups, this is part of the panel question. Can you speak to your own contextual identity? Korean American, Chinese German, right? Racially, ethnically, how has this shown up as part of your personal and your community's journey, your gender, all of these things?
Sure, I'll jump in just to start things off. As someone that didn't grow up in the church, I became a believer my senior year of college through a friend of mine who was faithfully witnessing and praying for me. So I didn't grow up with any sort of church context as a child into my young adulthood. So I didn't have any of that sort of baggage. Also, not being from a Korean American church context, you know, I would hear about, the drama between first gen, second gen, all that dynamic, how hard it is for EM pastors and this and that. And I had no clue. Like, I'm just oblivious to any of that because I just came into our church setting from sort of a very fresh perspective. And I'm also very glass is half full type of person. So when I first started coming to our church, all I could see were the positives. I was blown away by the Korean church context in terms of the way people served and the way people honored one another. To me, those were like pretty awesome things that I didn't necessarily see attending other more multicultural churches in Los Angeles, right? I was just really taken aback at a lot of the positives I saw. And over time, of course, you learn things and you start to see a bigger picture. But I think me being biracial on staff has been beneficial in the sense that when people come on a Sunday, and they're starting to see more diversity within our congregation as well. We have several Latino families and just increasing diversity. So I think me being biracial helps because people see, okay, you've got a biracial person on staff. And so I'm just blown away. I think our congregation has done a really neat job coming alongside one another, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity. We had a couple this past year. They lost their adult child. They're the Hispanic couple. And it was just a beautiful thing to see our largely Asian American church just love on them and surround them just throughout the whole process. And yeah, so I don't know if that fully answers the question, but
Thank you, Mike.
I have to say too that I kind of came into Korean American church with a little bit of naivety. Like I grew up in the Salvation Army, so I'm not sure if you're familiar. My parents are both ordained pastors in the Salvation Army. And so to me, husband and wife serving together, being ordained in the church was a norm for me. I didn't realize it was such a controversial topic until I started working at church every day, actually, and interacting with a lot of Korean American people, right? So that was normal. Right, so I didn't have any like issues of and struggle with my identity as a female pastor growing up because I saw my mom. She was a pastor's wife, but she was also the pastor, and they co-led, and they were church planters, and so so I kind of came into Korean American church with that baggage. I think that also helped, and then the Salvation Army motto is also it's called heart to man, heart to God and hand to man, and so I spend a lot of time going to rehabs, homeless shelters, doing homeless ministry. We have people living with us who are like severely mentally ill. Now I kind of question my parents' judgment. We have homeless people staying with us. We have unwed mothers living with us. So it was like, it was always a revolving door, right? And so to me, there wasn't a separation of that and church. And the motto of like heart, hand to man. So, in the 90s, our family was really struggling. And so we started family therapy. And my parents asked one of the church members to translate for them. So look, I don't know if I would be able to do that now because it's a vulnerable thing. But I think that was kind of normalized. So giving help and receiving help was also very normal. And I think that's how we kind of lead and exist in our context. Like I'm a full member of my life group, right? My life pod group, they see me as me, right? And so I don't know how to hide behind the title. It's hard enough being me. I could just have to be me. And so I think that is maybe one of the things I was reflecting back on this question. Maybe that's one of the ways that shaped me. Yeah. So I think we're all part of our life groups and we do life with our church members. Yeah.
Yeah. So Carol and I, we're part of a group, but we don't lead that group. Other people lead it. We're just members. And of course, if you grew up in a Asian church setting, that takes some getting used to, but they're used to it now. And so that's one of the things that we're not very hierarchical, and we share the leadership because we just treat you guys are adults. You guys do this at work. Surely you can do it at church. We will encourage you. I'll be your biggest supporter, biggest fan, and it seems to work like that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for me, even I'm kind of like OG seminary where there's like hardly any women back then, and even going into ministry at such a young age in a Korean American church, it was just really odd because my dad raised me to do anything I want to do. He spoke English to me, like there was no constraints because I'm a girl. And so to be in that environment, it was really odd, and I didn't understand it back then. But I don't count it against them because that's all they knew. And so thankfully, the Lord had me go into different environments where I was able to thrive and flourish. But what I found really interesting about this group is that we've all lived outside of LA in different states, different countries, and so I think we've also been bivocational, some of us, and all of us actually, and so that I think that adds to our environment and our ministry. It's because we are them, we've been them, and so we don't share from up here. We share like we're with you, so we get it, and so I think that's a little bit unique in our situation too.
Yeah, what's really striking to me is both the current context of being working together, ministering together now, but the whole lives you've lived up until now that are giving shape to what it can be, right? Like it's just really beautiful to hear it in a short time window. Is there anything that we didn't get to chat about that you would really love for our community to hear?
When we were meeting earlier, I was reminded of when I went to seminary. Our dean, Dr. Bing Hunter, he wrote a book called The God Who Hears, and this portion of this book, I still use it to this day as an example. This is a long time ago, but he said, Christians tend to live their lives like a TV dinner. If some of you hope old enough to know what a TV dinner is, it's like we have, here's our church life, here's our family life, here's our work life, our social group, maybe hobbies. And we just kind of live compartmentalized like that. They don't really intersect that much. That's what people kind of lived their Christian life back in the day. But Dr. Hunter said that our Christian lives are like a chicken pot pie, where distinct little ingredients, right? But in the wonderful, tasty goo, it's like it's all melded together. And not only is it beautiful, but it's delicious, And so I just felt like that is such a part of like what we can offer and remind people is that it's not like pieces and parts, but it's all like melded together like that. And it's actually something beautiful. So, yeah.
Thank you, Linda. Let's thank them for their time and their love.